Hi everybody, how you guys doing? Tonight was our Monsterland book reading. Give me 1 second while I connect with Facebook. I'll be going live on Facebook. And we are live on My Bigfoot Diaries. Hello everybody from the My Bigfoot Diary group and on my YouTube channel. Tonight we are going to read Monsterland by Ronnie LeBlanc. Now Ronnie I got to meet a couple years ago at a cryptid paranormal conference. There's a picture of him and I. He was a pretty cool guy. He let me share my Bigfoot experience. He was very down to earth, easy to talk to, and so I checked his booth. I bought his book, Monsterland, obviously, and he graciously signed it. You see the picture right there. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Let me double check. Okay, we are live. So this is the signed book that he gave me, that I bought. He signed it. I'll be reading a couple chapters tonight. Hope you guys can follow along. Okay, Chapter 1, Monsterland Encounters with UFOs, Bigfoot, and Orange Orbs. Okay. Chapter 1, Monsterland, Massachusetts. Wow. Can't post. Hi, Linda. Thank you. Glad I can hear you. Okay, Chapter 1, Monsterland, Massachusetts. I was born and raised in Leominster, Massachusetts. After graduating Leominster High School, I headed west for college in Southern California. I attended Vanguard University in Costa Mesa, studying film and television production, graduating with a degree in communications. I spent almost a decade on the West Coast living in Los Angeles, working in the entertainment industry. I'm a musician, an artist, and I love the outdoors. I grew up in a Christian home. We attended church every Sunday, and I also went to a youth group where I met some of the best people, some of whom are friends to this day. The time spent there and with these great people really forged my character and perception of life and what our purpose here is all about. However, even though I attended church and tried to follow the straight and narrow, I do not consider myself a religious person. I consider myself to be spiritual, and I believe in karma. What you put out into the universe comes back to you. I am what some consider a truth seeker. I have often wondered where we truly came from and where we are headed when we die. I have been fascinated with consciousness, science, space, and strange stories that have been echoed for eons. I am an inquisitive person, and I have always questioned the unknown. If God made us, who made God? While I was in California, I started to study Zen Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. I have had some strange things happen to me while growing up in Leominster. When I moved back home, they continued. I have always felt that there was something different and special about the city I grew up in. I was riding my bike one summer day on trails behind Fallsbrook School and headed into what is known as Monsterland. And I had always avoided a particular trail along the way to the sand pits where kids would ride their four-wheelers and dirt bikes. For a 12-year-old alone in the woods, I always felt an eerie feeling when I was anywhere near this trail. It was a feeling mixed with dread and fear. It didn't matter if it was a cloudless day, the opening of the trail, and the woods deep inside. seemed to be covered in darkness and haunted fog. It was guarded by 2 large oak trees on either side. This created an unwelcoming prehistoric looking gate for those tempted to explore any further. In my imagination, I could see coyotes and bears just waiting to pounce on me. But on this day, I was feeling incredibly daring and decided to brave the trail. The trail itself had a decent incline. I had to jump off my bike and walk it in. As I made my way along, I couldn't shake the fear that increased with every step. I kept looking behind me, feeling something or someone's gaze. After a few years, the terrain was a little easier to manage, and I got back on my bike and slowly started to pedal forward. The pedals squeaked with each rotation. Nervous, I scanned around me. My senses were on high alert. I don't know what possessed me to do so, but I stopped. With both of my feet planted firmly on the ground, balancing the bike between my legs, I listened. Nothing. Dead and quiet. There were no birds chirping and singing. There were no squirrels scurrying around along the ground. I wondered where all the animal life had disappeared to. I looked straight ahead as the trail narrowed. I wanted to start pedaling again, but it was as if I hit a mental wall. I couldn't convince myself to move forward. The trees had created a high canopy, and there were solid rays of sunlight ripping through the gaps of space between the leaves, lighting only select parts of the forest floor. Mesmerized, I watched the opposing shadows as they seemed to playfully dance along in front of me. The silence quickly evaporated when only a few yards away, I heard something crash through the woods so loudly, with such force, that I felt it in my chest. I literally shook. Up through the soles of my feet, the sounds of the footsteps reverberated through my body. It sounded like it was something very large, and my mind equated it to an elephant stomping away at a sprint. My eyes were fixated on the sea of green ferns, grasses, and small trees violently being pushed aside. I couldn't see anything making its path through the forest. My adrenaline pumped so hard, I thought that my heart might punch a hole through my chest. It was as if I was frozen in place until I couldn't hear the sounds anymore, because suddenly I snapped out of my zombie-like state. I felt like I could move again. Gathering my wits, I slammed my butt back onto my bike and headed back home as fast as I could. I don't think I have pedaled a bike faster in my life. Yeah, no crap. On the way home, my brain was racing, trying to comprehend what had just happened. What did I just encounter? It didn't make any sense at all, but I told myself that it didn't matter what it was. I would not be going back. I never ventured down that trail again. As I got older, I realized I had totally forgotten about what had happened to me in those woods. The memory resurfaced again as I started to look into the stories of Bigfoot in this area. 30 years later, looking back, I wonder if I had a Bigfoot encounter at the age of 12. It was something. Monsterland. It is situated in an unlikely place. It lies in the southern part of Leominster, bordering the neighboring town of Lancaster, in central Massachusetts. It never dawned on me how this particular piece of land got its name. Monsterland is a location where people have reportedly gone missing in connection to being in contact with a monster. better known the world over as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. In legendary cryptozoologist and author Loren Coleman's book, Monsters of Massachusetts, published in 2013, he wrote the following about Leominster State Forest and Monsterland. Another site of importance is the Leominster State Forest, a 4,300-acre parcel of forested land that includes the Wachusett Mountain State Reservation, containing the largest known area of old-growth forest east of the Connecticut River in Massachusetts. The entire greenway is composed of hardwood forests, alpine, meadows, ponds, streams, and wood shrub swamps. The area supports a rich and diverse wildlife and bird population. Findings of Bigfoot tracks are so frequent in the area of southern Leominster that it is known by residents thereabouts as Monsterland, a name that began during the time of sightings by local citizens of a hairy man-like creature off Route 2 in the 1950s and 60s. The stories go back almost a century. In 1884, a hunter witnessed some type of beast or creature while it walked upright, and then once it was spotted, it dropped down and it broke out into a sprint using all fours. That same year, a local farmer claimed that he watched helplessly as a creature tore his cattle to shreds, then ran off into the woods on two legs. According to StrangeUSA.com, legend has it that sometimes on a summer evening in the 1950s, a man abruptly enters a local bar in Leominster. He excitedly tells the manager of the establishment that he just witnessed a terrifying monster by the bridge on Old Mill Road. Long before cell phones would be ubiquitous and at everyone's fingertips, he asks the manager to call the police. The manager, who had taken the man seriously, sensing the fear in the stranger's eyes, obliges and calls the Leominster police station. After waiting for a short period of time, the visibly shaken man tells the manager of the bar that he is tired of waiting for the police, time is wasting. He states that he is going back to go and kill the creature. I'm going to prove to everyone that this thing is real. He leaves the bar and heads back to where he last saw the beast near the bridge. When the police finally arrive at the bar, which appears to be located at now named bar called Miranda's on Lancaster Street, the man making the amazing claim of seeing a monster is now gone. The manager then quickly explains to the police officers the frightened man's plan of heading back to the bridge in pursuit of the mysterious beast. The officers headed over to the Old Mill Road, hoping to find him. They arrive only to find his empty vehicle on the west side of the bridge with its lights on. The police, expecting he would eventually return to his car, decided to wait. When he never emerges from the woods, the officers then conduct a search of the area. He was never found. Two hunters several years ago were hunting in the woods behind the Sholin Farms area of Leominster. They found two deer carcasses hanging up in an apple tree near their hunting area. They looked like they were partially eaten, and the hunters assumed that it was the work of a mountain lion. But the eastern mountain lion isn't supposed to exist. I found it curious that there was no other explanation for what other animal could have done this. The hunters were so freaked out by what they saw, they immediately left the area. I began to wonder if someone or something might be trying to tell them to stay away. The apple orchard where these carcasses were discovered sits between Fall Brook and Hayward Reservoirs, Monsterland, with a straight shot west through some swamp and into Leominster State Forest. The same area where 6 five-toed human-like footprints were found in 2010. Sasquatch have been known to use trees as markers, bending down the limbs, weaving them together or breaking off branches higher than any animal could reach, even a moose. Hunters are said to have found trees shredded apart in Leominster State Forest. When others have asked the hunters if they thought that it might be a moose or deer doing this, they replied that if it was either a moose or a deer, they wouldn't want to meet it. It would have to have the power of a backhoe to do what we saw. Due to the small amount of Bigfoot sightings that are reported on several Bigfoot websites for central Massachusetts, BFRO shows that there are 26 total for Massachusetts and only 4 in Worcester County, Leominster with 1. It would seem to anyone by the sheer lack of numbers that Massachusetts has the area in and around Leominster wouldn't be considered a Bigfoot hotspot. I recently spoke with Jonathan Wilk, who is the lead investigator of the Massachusetts chapter of the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, who stated that they have over 100 open cases of Bigfoot sightings and reports that have yet to be followed up on within the great state of Massachusetts. Jonathan told me that they get reports from Monsterland and the surrounding areas all the time. For a majority of the people that reside in North America, most know only the legend of Bigfoot, and that falls into the category of imagination and folklore like dragons, fairies, and leprechauns. The general consensus, it seems, is that the kind of people who see Sasquatch in the woods when they are hiking or witness a UFO hovering above a field are considered somehow mentally challenged, or that they were on something. Bigfoot isn't real, it's a myth. There has yet to be a Bigfoot body to surface from the depths of mythology and legend to make this an animal to come to life for the rest of the world to see and believe. Some people that do believe in Bigfoot or Sasquatch believe that it is an undiscovered primate yet to be classified by science. The late Washington State University anthropologist Dr. Grover Krantz and Dr. John Bindernagel, and wildlife biologist from Canada, were convinced that Bigfoot is a relative of giant ape Gigantopithecus blacki, which roamed the area of China, India, and Vietnam over 200,000 years ago. Dr. John Bindernagel also believes that the Bigfoot sightings in the eastern states are just as convincing as those in the more well-known Pacific Northwest. I realize that the deciduous season trees, forests of the east, are in many ways richer in life than the coniferous evergreen forests in the west, and that could sustain a large ape. Others believe that it could be a race of ancient humans undiscovered and behind us on the evolutionary chain. But the healthy populations across North America, due to the thousands of sightings, photos, videos, footprints, casts, and hair samples found, it seems illogical that they would remain undiscovered. These sightings can't all be explained away as hoaxes. There are 3,313 reported sightings across the United States and Canada over the course of 92 years between 1920 and 2013. The BFRO database has over 12,000. What needs to be addressed is the fact that there are an unknown amount of sightings that are never reported due to the fear of being ridiculed by others and getting yourself labeled as crazy. So if that is the case, that there are a majority of Bigfoot experiences and sightings that go unreported every year, that number could be tenfold. Leominster State Forest, another area that seems to have a lot of unusual activity, encompasses the following surrounded 5 towns: Westminster, Princeton, Leominster, Fitchburg, and Sterling. The forest has a rich history of land use, dating back to Native Americans who used the Crow Hill ledges for shelter and for sending smoke signals to neighboring tribes. Leominster was originally inhabited by various divisions of Pennacook or Nipmuc Native Americans who lived along the Nashua River. The Nashaway or Nashua or Weshacom were a tribe of Algonquin Indians inhabiting the upstream portion of the Nashua River Valley in what is now northern half of Worcester County, Massachusetts, mainly in the vicinity of Sterling, Lancaster, and other towns near Mount Wachusett. In the early 1700s, a series of land grants were given to the heirs of soldiers killed in the French and Indian Wars. By the General Court of Massachusetts Bay Colony, many of these parcels became part of the unincorporated settlement known as Knowtown, almost all of which is part of Leominster State Forest today. Due to its isolation from neighboring communities to thrive, it ceased to exist in 1838. The lands of Knowtown were incorporated into the towns of Leominster, Fitchburg, Westminster, and Princeton. Today there are still numerous root cellar holes, stone walls, and curiously placed stone structures visibly along the forest roads and trails. I've seen those. One of those trails that runs through the state forest is the Mid-State Trail. This trail runs for 92 miles from Rhode Island to New Hampshire. The trail passes through the western edge of Leominster State Forest and includes the summit of Mount Wachusett and Mount Watatic. Animals follow and use these trails consistently, as well as power line routes and other game trails. Bigfoot has been theorized to do the same. I have always had an interest in Bigfoot, UFOs, and the paranormal. These are some of the biggest mysteries of the universe, and I have always wanted to know the truth. The idea of the unexplainable has always fascinated me. I spent a lot of time reading books and researching, and as such, have become sort of a resource for these types of experiences or encounters amongst friends who will often reach out to me with their stories as well as the experience of others. If there is something living in the Leominster woods, and if the stories are true, then one would have to assume that this isn't the same creature that people are seeing around here in the present day that they saw back then. There would have to be more than one. One would think that there would be more sightings of these creatures, but most people, when they go hiking or biking, stay on the trail. Rarely do people go off trail, as this is a quick way to get lost in the woods. The forest is so thick during the summer months that one can barely see about 4 feet in front of them. You are surrounded by green leaves and endless trees, and certain areas are difficult to traverse through with the overgrowth. Many UFO and Bigfoot researchers, including myself, have suggested that the Bigfoot and UFO phenomena are connected, due to the fact that they are seen together and often appearing in the same areas year after year. These theories haven't been accepted with open arms, but it is worth a look. I started to not only explore the Bigfoot stories and its history in Massachusetts, but then discovered that there was a strong correlation with the UFOs that have been seen in Bay State. UFOs also seem to be a part of Leominster's What Hidden and Untold History. I started with researching Leominster and Worcester County and span out of the border of the state. My goal is to compile as many of the different stories about UFOs, Bigfoot, and other strange phenomena, and see how they may be intertwined. The late Harvard psychiatrist Dr. John E. Mack, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his book on the alien abduction phenomenon, came to the conclusion that there was a connection between all types of paranormal activity. Quote, taken together, these phenomena tell us many things about ourselves and the universe that challenge the dominant materialist paradigm. They reveal that our understanding of reality is extremely limited. The cosmos is more mysterious than we have imagined. That there are other intelligences also, all about some of which seem able to reach us. Consciousness itself may be the primary creative force of the universe, and our knowledge of the physical properties of this world are far from complete. The emerging picture is a cosmos that is an interconnected harmonic web, vibrating with creativity and intelligence, in which the separateness is an illusion. Unquote. Not only do I feel that the Bigfoot and UFO phenomena are connected, there is also the element of synchronicity that seems to envelope the mystery. Synchronicity is a concept first explained by psychiatrist Carl Jung, which holds that events are meaningful coincidences if they occur with no causal relationship, yet seem to be meaningfully related. For example, you think of a coyote, and then a few seconds later, out of the blue, a coyote crosses the road in front of you as you are driving down the road. When it occurs, there is knowing that the events are somehow interconnected. At times, it also seems as if the events themselves are orchestrated by some higher power. Some of these experiences and observations will amaze you and scare you at the same time. Everything happens for a reason. For my role as director of digital advertising for the Boston Herald, I would travel quite frequently to meet with clients and agencies nationwide. In the spring of 2013, I had a bunch of agency meetings in Manhattan that spanned a couple of days wearing a suit and tie. I would normally have one of my sales representatives with me, but for this particular trip I was solo. When I would travel, I would always seek out any bookstores, big or small. I ended up having some time to spare in between meetings and decided to check out the Borders bookstore next to Madison Square Garden. I went straight to the New Age section where books about UFOs, Bigfoots, ghosts, and are categorized under. With my head tilted to the side, I slowly scanned the book titles, looking for anything on Bigfoot or UFOs that I hadn't devoured yet. I suddenly had the feeling like someone was watching me. That's when I noticed this lady, a brunette wearing all black and in her early 50s, looking in my direction. I continued to browse through the books, and I could still feel her gaze, even with my back turned to her. She then slowly made her way over to me and was now looking at the same section of books. We were literally standing right next to each other, maybe a foot away. I looked over again at her. She was now completely turned and staring right at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "I noticed that you were looking at the books about UFOs." "Yes, I have been into UFOs, Bigfoot, and the paranormal since I was a child. She then quickly says, "You realize that most of this stuff is crap, right? There are some good ones, but more bad than good." I nodded and said, "Yes, I have read some of the bad, but the good ones have really opened my eyes." "You have a very strong aura," she told me. "I noticed it right away. It clear, crystal clear, very rare to see one like yours. Mine is clear as well. I'm a witch. Do you realize that they look for people like us?" I had a lump in my throat. "Who looks for people like us?" I questioned. She then looked up to the ceiling as if the answer was in the sky. "They're able to locate people like us. We have a higher vibration. There is a bigger change coming. Why do you think you are so interested in UFOs? Do you think that you have to be taken? Do you think you have been taken?" I thought about it for a second. Oh boy, I don't think so. I've had some interesting experiences growing up, though. I went to school for filmmaking and screenwriting in Southern California. I read so much about the subject. I figure I will write a movie about this stuff, I confidently replied. She paused for a moment and then just stared at me. She then smiled as if someone was telling her something. She listened intently and then took a breath and said, "You are right. You're going to write something, but it's not going to be a movie, though. It's going to be a book. It's going to change the way people think about all this. It's going to help pave the way for a change, but it won't be for a couple years from now. You aren't ready yet." I just stared back at her in disbelief. "I don't know about that, and I have no desire to write a book," I said firmly. She responded, "You will in time." Feeling uncomfortable about the conversation, I abruptly pulled out my phone and looked at the clock. My meeting was in 20 minutes, so I told her it was great talking with her and wished her well, but I had to go. Otherwise, I was going to be late for my meeting. I politely said goodbye. I walked away shaking my head, thinking about how absurd her comment was about me writing a book. That would never happen. Chapter 2: Leominster and UFOs. Leominster is known as the Pioneer Plastic City for its part in shaping the plastic industry. It garnered the nickname of Comb City due to its production of plastic combs, thanks to the invention of celluloid and development of injection molding. Products like Foster Drant sunglasses, Tupperware, and the Pink Flamingo, which had adorned lawns across America, were born in Leominster. The very first European settlers began arriving in the mid-17th century and in 1653. The area of Leominster was first founded as part of the town Lancaster. In the year 1675, the King Philip's War started and took the lives of hundreds of people. In order to avoid further conflict with the native Indians, the settlers negotiated with Chief Sholin, the sachem of the Nishatshawe tribe of the land, for the land. It would be the only parcel of land to be legally purchased in central Massachusetts. The town of Leominster was officially established on July 4th, 1740. The city of Leominster was also an integral part of the Underground Railroad that ushered slaves from the south into Canada. Leominster was a major stop along the way. The Emory Stern Schoolhouse and the Francis Drake and Jonathan Drake House led anti-slavery campaigns and helped house fugitive slaves. A disguised Frederick Douglass stayed in Leominster for 2 weeks when he was a wanted slave at the time. Rumor has it that Douglass sharpened his skills learning how to write and read while staying here. He went on to become a national abolitionist leader, an orator, and a statesman. Leominster, also known as being the birthplace of our biggest celebrity, John Chapman, otherwise known worldwide as Johnny Appleseed. He was a nurseryman who introduced apples to many of the states along the East Coast, eventually becoming an American legend. Disney would make an animated movie about him in 1948. The city was also the center of a time traveler video several years ago that went viral on social media. It's known as the time-traveling mobile phone footage from 1938. There is black and white film footage of a woman by the name of Gertrude Jones, who is speaking on what looks like a mobile telephone. It is purportedly a pre-war prototype of a wireless phone device developed by a communications factory owned by DuPont in Leominster. Gertrude's grandson, going by the username Planachek, said that the girl in the film is his grandmother. He states that he asked her about it, and she remembers it well. Gertrude was one of the 5 women that were given this phone prototype to test out for a week. She was talking to one of the scientists who was holding another wireless phone and is off to the right of Gertrude when she walks into the frame of the film. The film is still included as an example of a time traveler using a cell phone, something that would not be invented until 1973. It would eventually be created 35 years later by Martin Cooper, an executive in Motorola. The first cell phone was called the Motorola Dynatac. Unbeknownst to some, Leominster is also known as a UFO hotspot. That's probably why the Greater New England UFO Conference was started and is held at City Hall in Leominster every October. Steve Fermany, a Leominster resident, was the former New England director of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. MUFON is the world's oldest and largest UFO phenomenon investigative organization. Steve Fermany is also the founding father of the New England UFO Conference. The new organizers, Willie Miranda and Susan McNeil Spugler, both have had their own UFO experiences in Leominster. When Susan was in the womb, her mother told her that there was a cigar-shaped UFO with windows hovering above their home on West Street. Willie's mother and brother, while they were walking in downtown Leominster on a sunny summer day, watched a saucer-shaped UFO as it hovered over the City Hall in the late 1990s, watching it until it shot away at a great speed. There was also purportedly a UFO landing as well. Several years ago, there were sightings of a craft in the area. It seemed to have landed, and a Leominster resident investigated the scene the next day and located tripod or landing gear indentations on the ground. The sand around the area of the landing showed signs of vitrification. This is when the sand is heated up to the point where its existing matter is transformed into glass. The Rendlesham Forest incident, which is known as the British Roswell, is probably one of the best documented UFO cases in the world. It was a case that involved the United States Air Force personnel and security police. The Rendlesham Forest incident was a UFO encounter over the course of 3 nights in 1980 in the Joint RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge bases in the United Kingdom. They were twin NATO bases where a craft landed in the forest adjacent to the bases. Several soldiers were within feet of the landed craft. Symbols and writing like hieroglyphics were found on the outside of the craft. It is rumored that the base housed nuclear warheads and the craft was seen hovering over the munitions area. One of those police officers on the base that was involved in this historic UFO event was Steve LaPlume, a Leominster native. LaPlume observed the craft fly right over him while he was on duty. He shared his story for the first time, speaking only once in the 30 years at the New England UFO Conference in 2014. He said he will never speak about it again. A bit of his story is included in the book Left at Eastgate, co-written by Peter Robbins and Larry Warren. Larry was one of the military police officers involved in the case. There was a multitude of UFO sightings during the years of 1966 through 68 in Massachusetts. The central Massachusetts area seemed to be a magnet for UFOs, specifically in the year 1967. In the book, The Adrissen Affair, by UFO investigator Raymond E. Fowler, the author points to the significance of the surrounding UFO sightings in the area and their interest in the freshwater ponds. He states, significantly, a great number of 1967 UFO reports involved sightings in upper central Massachusetts. A number of reports of objects hovering over freshwater ponds came from Phillipston, Royalston, Orange, and Tully, Massachusetts. Famed alien abductee Betty Andreasson had her first extraterrestrial encounter while living in Leominster when she was a young girl. Her most notable incredible abduction encounter, which included her family being frozen in suspended animation, as well as exploring a UFO craft and interacting with its occupants, occurred in South Ashburnham on January 25, 1967. Her story was the subject of 5 different books by Raymond E. Fowler. An investigation team was put together which included a solar physicist, an aerospace engineer, electronics engineer, a hypnotist, a medical doctor, telecommunications specialist, and a UFO investigator. She had 14 sessions of regression hypnosis, 2 lie detector tests, a psychiatric review, and a character reference check. Both Betty and her daughter, Becky, had experienced UFOs and encounters with the typical gray aliens. The results of the inquiry would eventually be published in the 528-page account that stated that they were both sane individuals, both agreed upon the details of the encounters, and that they had experienced something that they believed to be otherworldly. The 1972 PSE analysis report on both Betty Andreasson and her daughter Becky concluded they were telling the truth with regards to the 1967 incident. In the opinion of analysts, the results are conclusive. During the course of investigation and afterward, Betty and her husband Bob Luca were placed under FBI surveillance, had their phones tapped, and had low-flying, unmarked black helicopters buzzing over their property. Author Raymond E. Fowler confirmed that Betty's family had men in black watching their house and black unmarked helicopters hovering over their home. On March 25, 1980, while Betty was placed under hypnosis, she lived a UFO experience at the age of 7 that occurred in Leominster, Massachusetts. The year was 1944, and while Betty was in her playhouse waiting for her girlfriend, a bright marble-shaped object flew in and affixed itself to Betty's temple. She grew faint, and then she heard a voice in her head. The voice told her that they have been watching me, I'm coming along fine, good progress, I was going to be happy very soon. Other people were going to be happy, getting some things ready to show me, it wouldn't be until I was 12. While walking in the woods in Westminster, Betty would encounter a gray alien wearing a strange suit. Seconds later, a glowing ball of light was released from the alien's suit. In a similar fashion like the occurrence in Leominster, the orb attached itself to Betty's temple. It delivered another message through a voice in her head. The voice explained that she has still another year. They are preparing the path of the future so that she may help others. The glowing ball also made an appearance during the 1980 hypnosis sessions. Betty saw an alien in the room fade in and then fade out. Before the ball of light showed up, one of the team members who was a police officer, witnessed the ball, light resting on the curtain, almost as if it was watching the hypnosis session. The Raymond Fowler, in one of his books entitled The Watchers, talks specifically about the year 67 and UFOs in and around the cities surrounding Leominster and South Ashenburgham. The Condon report may have dismissed UFOs, but the UFOs were not listening. The year 1967 brought scores of unexplained reports to my attention as Massachusetts director of a subcommittee for the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. At that time, I did not have the vaguest notion of Betty's abduction from her home at South Ashburnham. However, there were many sightings all around the perimeter of her hometown. Many of the domed discs and cylindrical objects observed at close range cause electrical interference with automobile ignition systems, radios, and television, and even area power failures. A former Coast Guard pilot and owner of a small airport, awakened by a humming sound, went outside to be confronted by a domed disc manned by two small humanoid figures. Towns all around Betty's hometown reported oval objects hovering over freshwater ponds in that area. In the adjoining town of Leominster, a wife watched helplessly as a hovering oval object paralyzed and pinned her husband to the outside frame of their car. Just 1 week before this occurred, Betty Anderson was abducted from the adjoining town of South Asherburnham. The UFO case that Fowler references occurred at St. Leo's Cemetery, which is down the street from Betty Anderson's first experience with the UFO phenomenon. She was living on Howard Street in Leominster, 2 streets over. The Leominster police investigated the incident. They quickly discovered that the witnesses were truly shaken up. The investigating officer explained that they had experienced something real, and according to his expertise, they were telling the truth. Incredibly, another street over on the same stretch of road lies the pub, now called Miranda's. Miranda's was the scene of our missing man in Leominster that was discussed in Chapter 1, who charged into the bar, described a hairy beast that he courageously went back for, but never returned to tell the tale in the 1950s. At St. Leo's Cemetery is right down the street from where I currently reside in Leominster. I jog by the scene of the crime in the morning during my daily running routine, and always marvel that this space had a craft with extraterrestrials visiting Leominster several years back. The Leominster Police Department was called to the scene, and Lieutenant Matteo Ciccone interrogated the couple until 4:30 a.m. He knew the family very well, and he felt that they had experienced something real. William was known by the officer as well as his mother as not being afraid of anything. This was labeled one of the unknown UFO incidences in that happened in Leominster. In UFO Testament, Anatomy of an Abductee, author Raymond Fowler shares this tale of the flying saucer encounter in Leominster. According to the U.S. Weather Service, March 8, 1967 was a clear, cool night. Visibility was 12 miles. In Boston, the thermometers read 28 degrees Fahrenheit. A recent snowstorm had left a beautiful blanket of white velvet draped over the fields and trees. A couple I'll call Mr. and Mrs. William Roberts of Leominster, Massachusetts, got a sudden inspiration to go for a late-night scenic drive through the countryside. After driving for an hour and a half, they started home. At about 1 a.m., they entered the town of Leominster, where, as Mrs. Roberts later told investigator Frank Petchulis, we suddenly came across a very thick fog and had to slow our car to a real low speed for safety reasons. As we passed the cemetery, Mr. Roberts continued, I noticed what looked like a large light to my left. I asked my wife if she saw anything, and she said no. I was certain that I had and decided I would look again. Mr. Roberts, thinking that the lights might be a fire and the fog was smoke, turned his car around and drove back into the mist. This time they both saw the light. The bright glow was not from a fire, but from an object glowing in the air directly above the cemetery. At this point, Mr. Roberts lowered his window and excitedly told his wife, I think we have something here. He parked his car broadside to the hovering object, which hung in the air a bare 200 yards away, bright as an acetylene torch. It was shaped like a flattened egg and emitted a sound like a dynamo. Against his wife's wishes, William got out of the car. Excitedly, he raised his hand and pointed it at the blazing object. Simultaneously, the automobile lights, radio, and engine ceased functioning. At the same time, Mr. Roberts received an electrical shock almost instantaneously. His body became numb and immobilized from head to foot, and his arm was thrust back against the car by some unseen force, hitting the roof so hard that an imprint was made in the ice and snow. When the car went dead, Mrs. Roberts interjected, I was yelling for Bill to get back in the car, but he did not move. I was unable to move, Mr. Roberts told the investigator. My wife was in a panic. My mind was not at all affected. I just couldn't move. When he did not respond to her screams, she slid across the seat and tugged at his jacket through the open window. He could hear her begging him to come back inside, but couldn't move a muscle. He was totally paralyzed from head to foot. Mr. Roberts recalled, I was there 30 to 40 seconds before the object moved away. It moved quickly at an ever-increasing speed, not instantly. Abruptly, their car's lights and radio came back on. The humming object had accelerated upward and out of the sight above the dense fog patch. On the following day in Andover, Massachusetts, witnesses would sight a strangely lit silent object hovering about 1,000 feet above the ground of a country club. I was told a story that there was a UFO sighting along Main Street in Leominster during the 1980s. There were several boys 14 to 15 years old who were walking home late at night from their friend's house. Aside from the street lamps, the night sky was pitch black. This occurred only a few streets down from the city hall, where a flying saucer was seen hovering above. As the boys were walking along Main Street, near Orchard Street, a bright light emerged from the sky above them. lighting up to the surrounding area as if it were daytime. Instantly, one of the boys took off at a full sprint, running away from the scene. The others didn't move, looking up mystified. A few seconds later, a car approached, and the boys tried to stop the car to show the driver the strange light above. The car wouldn't stop, driving off. They then tried flagging down the next vehicle, which turned out to be the Leominster police cruiser. The officer stopped, exited his vehicle, and looked up into the night sky. All he could see was the bright light engulfing him and the boys. The police officer reached for his radio and was about to call into dispatch, but had no idea what to tell them. What were they looking for? The boys suddenly found themselves back at one of their houses. They were on the front lawn, and the boy who took off running was now with them again. They didn't know how they suddenly ended up at the house. We don't know what happened with the police officer involved or his identity. The others asked the boy who ran away from the light why he did it. He proclaimed that he felt that they were coming for him, so he decided to run. Sounds like he has had some previous experiences. It is also reminiscent of a classic case of missing time and alien abduction. Missing time is often reported with UFO abductees when it seems a few minutes have passed, but in actuality hours have gone by, like the Betty and Barney Hill case in New Hampshire. Sometimes it can be even days, like with Travis Walton abductee case in Arizona. While researching for this book, I uncovered another encounter that occurred in Leominster that suddenly, exactly like a certain area that we have experienced a lot of strange phenomena, Leominster State Forest. It was found on About.com and entitled UFO Encounter in Massachusetts, written by Christian D. In April of 1999, my best friend, 5 guys that we had been hanging out with at the time, I had gone to a wooded area in Leominster, Massachusetts. I cannot remember exactly where in Leominster these woods were located, but I do remember that it was off of a very quiet back road. It was sometimes after midnight. We got out of the car and approached a closed gate. We walked around the gate and walked along a path that was wide enough for a car or truck to travel and was still covered by thick ice, even though the temperatures had started to warm up recently. Along the left side of the path were trees, and along the right side of the path was water. We walked for approximately a half a mile before we started to travel on another path through the trees that followed a small creek. I'm not sure how long we traveled on this path. It was probably only 15 minutes at the most. We came to a small clearing where there were still trees mostly surrounding us, but they were further apart. There was a lot more room for us to walk around. We were surrounded by trees on the 3 sides, but to the right was a lake or a pond. At the part that we were at, it was only about 25 feet to get to the land on the other side of the water, where the trees were so thick that you could not see through them at all. To the left, the land ended, and there the water went further out. I could not tell how far exactly, but at least a quarter mile. When we all got to this point, we seemed to split up for the same reason. My best friend and I walked to the edge of the trees to look at the water, and 4 of the guys went to the direction opposite of us, further into the woods, while one of the guys traveled on along the path. I'm not sure how long we were standing at the edge of the water. It seemed like forever, but in actuality, it was probably only about 10 minutes. Then above the trees that were across the water from us, I saw a bright light moving toward us. which seemed to be hovering right over the trees. I started to feel very nervous and asked my friend what she thought it was, and she said it was probably only a plane or a medical helicopter or something. But I knew that it was too close and it wasn't making any noises at all. I called over to the guys that we were with to come over and take a look, and they came running over saying, "Look, it's coming. I told you this is where we saw it." Needless to say, I started freaking out. If I would have known that they were taking us for a long trek through the woods to see if we could see a UFO, I would not have gone. 3 of the guys had been in these woods before when they had seen the same thing, and they have decided to see if they could show it to the other 2 guys. My best friend and I just happened to be along for the ride because they needed her to bring them there because she was the only person with a car. My whole body was extremely tense by then, and I just wanted to leave. This thing was starting to travel across the water now to our side of the trees, and just seeing it in the air and the reflection of the water freaked me out and more. My best friend seemed to shut down in the shock or something, and was not comprehending anything at this point. I was trying to tell her that I needed to get out of there right now. She didn't understand why at this point. It seemed like she was mentally blocking this whole experience out, so she didn't understand my urgency to leave. I told the guys to get us out of the woods right away. And they said no, and that they weren't going anywhere at the moment. I didn't feel like fighting with them, I just wanted to leave, so I asked them how to get back, and they would not tell us. I gave up asking and was determined to find the way out. So I started to pull my friend by her arm to try and find the creek that we had followed to get to this point. I looked up again and it was right over our heads. It was not really big like I would have expected it to be. It was round like a basketball and seemed only about 5 feet in diameter. It was emitting red and blue lights, but they didn't seem to be coming from any one spot that I could see on the object, and it also did not seem to have any sort of pattern to the way the lights were emitted. The only way that I can really describe the lights in words is to say that it seems almost like they were tie-dyed and constantly changing. I wanted to run through the woods to get out, but my friend wasn't hurrying up, and this path was still icy in spots, although not nearly as bad as the main path. As we walked, this thing just kept following us right above our heads the whole time. I thought I was going to die. Every single hair on my body seemed to be standing on end, and my heart was racing so fast I thought I was going to have a heart attack at 18 years old. I wanted to just stop and curl up in a ball, but I knew that I could not stop walking. After walking for what seemed like forever, I saw the main path up a little ice-covered hill through the trees. I started pulling up my friend along even more urgently. She made it up the path before me with no problem, but when I went to go up it, I kept on sliding back down. I started crying frantically and begging God to help me make it up the hill. I had to get down on my hands and knees and crawl up that hill, but I finally made it. We started walking along the main path as quickly as possible, but my friend kept on falling flat on her back and hitting her head on the icy ground. It amazed me that she never seemed to see this thing that was following right over our heads. Whenever she fell, I would stop to help her up and the objects would just stop right over us. When we started moving again, so did it. It took us at least twice as long to walk that path back to the car than it had to walk from it. It was like the faster we walked, the longer it took. Finally, I could see the gate, which meant the end of the path. I thought that I was never going to see it. The UFO followed us all the way up to the gate where it stopped. We got into the car and locked all the doors. I just watched it hover there the whole time we sat there. I tried to get her to leave the guys there and just drive us away, but she didn't seem to realize what was going on. The thing didn't go away until the guys got back to that point about an hour and 15 minutes after we did. When they got to the gate, it just disappeared. The guys got into the car and we left. They kept on saying how awesome it had been, that they had seen them in the woods. I didn't ask what they were. I just wanted to get as far away from there as possible. To this day, my best friend does not remember anything that happened that night in the woods. I will never forget it, though, and I will never go back into the woods ever again. The area Leominster has been plagued with Bigfoot UFOs and weird balls of light, typically referred to as orbs. I began to ponder why Leominster was so special, that the residents in local cities and surrounding towns had been experiencing these phenomena for decades. I felt strongly that these were somehow interconnected. I grew up in Spruce Street in French Hill, in Leominster up until I was about 10 years old. My family then bought a house on Union Street, directly across from Fallbrook Farm. The farm consisted of an apple orchard and a small pond. If I wasn't riding my bike, I was across the street at the pond. I would spend most of my summer days catching fish, frogs, or snakes. It was a great neighborhood. I used to be able to take my bike and ride for miles into Sterling or Clinton and be gone all day long. My parents never worried. It was a different time back then compared to how it is now. I also lived about 5 houses down from Fallbrook School. I would venture into Monsterland and the surrounding woods for hours on end. I recently found out that one of our neighbors' houses on Union Street, facing the school, was watching UFOs on a nightly basis. He confided in a friend of mine's father with his secret. He hadn't told a soul for fearing being ridiculed. He would awake in the middle of the night, usually around 3 a.m. He would make his way to the front porch, and with Monsterland in view, he would then sit and wait. In the distance above what is known as Monsterland are these enormous power lines. He would watch as UFOs would come to these power lines and charge up for several minutes, glowing insistently, and then zoom off into the darkness. He said that this would happen almost every night, and there were a multitude of ships that would be seen at any given time if you watched long enough. With the city's long history of UFOs, I believe his story. I remembered an incredibly vivid dream that I once had when I was living on Union Street. I had never forgotten the dream, and I can still picture the scene in my mind. I often wonder if this was truly a dream or if this was really happened to me. In my dream, I awoke from a deep sleep and then headed downstairs to the kitchen. I approached the kitchen door and opened it. Through the storm glass door, I looked down the street to my next door neighbor's house and watched a UFO slowly moving above Union Street. It was the classic saucer type, colorful lights with a man emanating from the craft. I stopped hovering It stopped hovering directly above my neighbor's house. I watched as my neighbor walked out his front door, walking to the end of his driveway, and stopped directly underneath the UFO. He looked as if he was in a zombie-like state, standing there waiting to be picked up. It was as if he had done this several times before. The UFO then shot a bright white beam of light, which engulfed him. Instantly, he was sucked up into the light. Then the light shut off. The UFO then slowly moved in the direction of my house, and that's all I remember. I don't remember shutting the door. I don't remember opening the door and walking out. I woke up. The dream still gives me the chills. People typically don't remember dreams so vividly from 30 years ago. I began to question whether it was a bad dream or a memory that I was supposed to forget. When I was reading the book Incident at Exeter, the author of John Fuller described several locations where UFO sightings were taking place. They were seen at or near various hills. I couldn't help notice the similarities of the different hills and the ones that we have in Leominster. I wondered, could there be something under these domes of Earth that attract the UFOs? What I found intriguing was the fact that author John Fuller remarked that at least half a dozen people had spoken with regarding these personal UFO sightings mentioned that these UFOs were being seen over and near electrical power lines. UFOs were repeatedly witnessed over these high-tension wires, which cut across the country, delivering power to the surrounding communities. Fuller stated that he would plan to follow up with this trend because several of the locations most popular for the flurries of reports were at the base of these power transmission lines. Fuller states that the obvious that if there were any truth at all to the theory that UFOs were operating on electromagnetic principles, there could be an affinity of the objects for the power lines, which could then possibly set up an electromagnetic field around them. On another note, zoologist and UFO researcher Ivan T. Sanderson noticed that over 50% of all so-called sightings of UFOs have occurred over, coming from, going away over, or plunging into or coming out of the water. Taking that even further, in his book Ultra-Terrestrial Contact by Philip Imbrogno, the author reviewed 124 cases of UFO sightings at a very low altitude, at water level less than 50 feet. These UFOs were all triangle in shape. In all of these cases, the objects chose artificial lakes and reservoirs. There were no low-altitude sightings over natural lakes. In every artificial lake and reservoir investigated, he found a compass of deviation between 0.32 and 0.8 degrees, indicating the presence of a magnetic anomaly. The natural lakes showed only a maximum of 0.10 degrees deviation. So the objects were more attracted to the man-made bodies of water and their magnetic anomalies rather than naturally occurring lakes. Imbrogno believes that the reason that the UFOs are attracted to these bodies of water is due to the geographical features below. Most of the area has iron ore in its substrate composition, high-grade magnetite. The natural lakes were formed during the last ice age, when the glaciers carved out of the rock below and made the basins that later filled with the water from melting ice sheets. However, the glaciers didn't expose all the iron ore. There was a thick layer of granite which remains on top. The use of heavy machinery and blasting to create the artificial lakes caused the depth to be deeper than the natural lakes. This exposed more of the iron ore, which in turn creates a stronger magnetic anomaly within these bodies of water. The UFOs have been reported to charge up over these bodies of water like they have been seen to do with power lines. And Brogno is also confident that they need to do this for a very important reason. He states that the craft could not necessarily be of an extraterrestrial origin, but of an interdimensional one, a parallel universe perhaps. Due to the magnetic anomalies within these man-made bodies of water, there could be some sort of bend in space-time along the craft to enter and leave our universe. The UFOs could very well be using the power lines or the magnetic anomalies from the artificial lakes to charge up, which could allow them the ability to return to where they came from, possibly another dimension. End of Chapter 2 of Monsterland. Wow. What did you guys think of it? It's pretty good, I think. And that was just 2 chapters. If you guys want to check him out, I think his book might be available on Amazon, so you can check it out there. It's called Monsterland. Thank you guys for joining me for the book reading. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe you can get the book yourself as well. It's I don't know how many pages it is. He's got quite a bit in this. It's like 265 pages long. Yeah. Lots of stuff. Hope you guys have a good Sunday. Have a good night, everyone.